Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being in this session. This is really exciting to me, and I'll tell you why it's so exciting to me. So I don't know how many of you, well, has anybody read December, the Morgan Stanley report on, no? Well, let me tell you something about it. So, well, Stuart has, that doesn't count. So yeah, that's correct, that's correct. Actually, what is funny about that is that the preview to the report is like 200 slides or something. And then there's a report, of course, which is expensive. Nevertheless, let me tell you something about that report. So they sort of looked at the computer industry, the IT, and they looked over many, many years. So from the 1960s to 2010. And they sort of divided this period into these 5 cycles of innovations, or 5 cycles, as they call them. I don't remember the exact terms and things they used. But so they think of like what happens in the 1960s. You had all the mainframes, the big, large computers, and those were sold in quantities of 10,000 maybe, 20,000, 100,000 like that. So then came the mini computers, right? They were sold, they sold like, a few million, maybe 10 million, 100 million, like. Then came the PCs. That was hundreds of millions, right? Then after PCs came the mobile, what they call as the mobile internet, and that was, that's sort of what you see in search, for example, what you're seeing, everything about the web, for example, that you're seeing. And then the final cycle is what they call, which is the sort of the era of the smartphone, or the Kindles of the world, or everything sort of mobile. All right. The interesting thing about that is there's nothing new here. But the interesting thing about that is that each of these eras, as it came, created great economic value around it. So if you look at it from a perspective of how much money was exchanging hands to create that particular sort of era, it is phenomenally different. And the way sort of also to look at it is that how many devices were being sold and how much software, and every device had software in it, and that software was being sold on those devices. Okay, so. Now you're selling, billions of devices, correct? They're all mobile. People are using it for different reasons, and each one of them is running some software on it. Okay, so things are changing, and the other interesting thing is that for every cycle as it came, it pretty much eliminated the old cycle. So if you think about, when I started my career after school, I had an offer from Digital Equipment Corporation. How many of you remember DEC? Okay, well the older folks do, but. If you remember, DEC was like the big deal, big kahuna, right? It was sort of like when I got an offer from Microsoft as well, and I got an offer from DEC, and I thought to myself, who the heck is going to work for this piddly PC thing? I'm a man, I want to work on workstations, and look at it today, it's gone, right? Think about all the companies like Data General, all the sort of the other Burroughs, Wang Labs, they all worked in this era. So what has happened is that every era, every cycle has sort of created more value, and people have gravitated towards that and done more with it. And have tried to sort of pull all the functionality that they were already accustomed to into this new cycle, right? So now we are in an era where, it's sort of the phones, it's the handhelds, it's the mobile devices, it's the Kindles of the world, or the Nooks of the world, or the Sony e-reader, or whatever, right? So that's where we are. And a lot of companies recognize that fact. Now, so that's definitely a trend. And then, of course, the other trend is, of course, try to make this easier in the sense, the cost of ownership. How do you reduce the cost of ownership? And that's where the cloud is. All right. So then, one other question, observation that you realize as you work on these devices is, even though Apple would have 100,000 apps or 200,000 apps, but if you sort of really think about it, these are very sort of these are low-lying fruit. These are applications that people write a little bit of it and then sort of do it. But if you want to do some really fancy, heavy-duty apps that require lots of processing, require lots of memory, lots of battery, etc., then it's not clear that you can actually get it done. Okay? When I look at a whole lot of things that are going on in the Microsoft Research Labs, and all the interesting applications that people are building, and how compute intensive they are, how resource intensive they are, you start to feel that I don't know how we can do it in this phone, because one thing that is not changing is battery. The battery energy is not changing. And I don't know if you know this, but there was a sort of an article that came out in the IEEE proceedings that battery energy doubles about every 35 years. Okay? And also, if you think about it, as you put more and more energy into the battery, you're actually creating a bomb. So it's sort of, you're not going to get to the point where you will have lots and lots of batteries. Okay? The other problem that is happening is the spectrum. We don't have enough spectrum, so we don't have the capability of doing everything the way sort of we're getting used to now. Anyway, so as we sort of think about this new world, of course, we in research have many projects that try to go after these problems. Like we have a project called Maui, which sort of talks about how do you take an application, partition it, and offload it. The idea being that you want the cloud to assist the mobile device. All right. Now, as we go into this thing, we start to realize that, of course, lots of innovation happening, and what we need to do is we need to equip some of these people who are, or some of the students and younger kids who are working in this space to this new world that is emerging. It's not necessarily the world of desktops, and it is not necessarily the world, sort of that as we grew up in. And this is the new world. So in the new world, you have different programming paradigms, and those include the cloud and the mobile. So that's what sort of the reason to start. As I looked around the field, and I'm very sort of connected to the professional world in some sense, or the sort of the academic world, because I participate in a lot of these conferences and work in them. I started to realize that there were very few courses that were being offered, and there were very few sort of support structures that is available. So every time I talk to a lot of the researchers and academicians, and such as yourself and faculty, people who wanted to do it, they had things, but they had to sort of do a lot of stuff. They had to reinvent a whole lot of things. Okay, so then that got us to thinking that perhaps in order to move things forward, perhaps we can sort of provide a bar on which people don't have to spend time reinventing a lot of this stuff. And we've had some success in the past with this. I don't know if you're familiar. I know Lily definitely is familiar because she was in my group at the time. We started this thing called, we did this thing called the Mesh Academic Toolkit. This was at the time, this was around 2002, 2003, when mesh networks became very popular, and or didn't actually become popular, but they were being revisited sort of from a commercial sector. And so a lot of the universities were very interested in teaching courses in that area, but every time you would go in there, the students were doing writing things like routing protocols. And if you sort of looked at the number of routing protocols, there were like hundreds of routing protocols already out there. So it was sort of, but they had to do something like that in order to get their meshes up and things. So we created this thing called the Mesh Networking Kit, where we provide a lot of software, we provided a lot of support, and we provided it in a kit form, and we distributed it. And I remember more than 900 universities, I think it was 1,200, but because 900 universities took this and started to teach a lot of courses. So we had massive amount of success. So we had done this in 2005, and because of the success, we did it again in 2007, and that succeeded. So now, moving forward in 2010, the general feeling now is again that we are in a stage where we understand cloud somewhat, I guess. We understand mobile somewhat, I guess. And how do we enable sort of the students to be creative and start to build on it, try to understand the dynamics of a cloud and the mobile, and try to do it. So the Hawaii project is essentially that. It is it provides sort of a substrate. It provides some basic set of services, tools. I mean, I think of it as you're familiar with the App Store concept. Think of it as a service store concept. So what we do is we actually will provide a bunch of services, similar to what Azure provides. So if you know about Azure, Azure provides you with storage and computation. But to that, if you sort of think about mobility, the world of mobile, you need things like alerting services, right? You have something happen and you want an alert to happen, so the phone gets up and does something to it. Similarly, you need location services, right? And so similarly, you need other things like, what Brian will talk about, mapping services, because location and mapping is quite fundamentally together, or inherently together. So we thought we'd put this bundle of services together and offer it to academics, along with all the supporting documentation and help to program these services. And we will also provide, Windows phones, for example, and provide whatever little software that needs to get on the Windows phone so that students can now start to build these fancy, interesting services or applications on top of this framework. And so that's what it is. But in the meantime, what we hope to learn from ourselves, is also the fact that, that Microsoft is very much a platform company. And when you look at, how sort of we've succeeded, you look at our Win32, for example, which was a reason for our big success, was it in some sense commoditized the PC so people could write lots and lots of application on this standard API. So the hope is that as more and more students use this stuff, as they teach courses on this stuff, what will emerge from it would be these needs that are pretty uniform across different applications. Those needs then will give us some understanding of what that platform, the new platform, should look like, right? So today these things are just thrown out there. I mean, you can program the phone and you can program the cloud. But if you do assume that these two have to work together to do the really fancy stuff. So for example, there's a class of applications that iPhone, for example, doesn't deliver as much, or G phone or whatever, don't deliver as much, which is about collaborative sensing. In the academic community, as you know, and people who work in sensors, that urban sensing, collaborative computing, collaborative sensing, all that stuff is very cool and very important, right? How do you make it easy for people to sort of move forward, given we already understand these things? So Hawaii will provide some sort of a setting where you would be able to do collaborative sensing or collaborative computing types of applications very easily. Okay, so that's sort of generally what it is. We have been actually quite successful. We have piloted the program. 3 universities have already used it. For example, the 3 universities being Wisconsin, Duke, and UCS, University of California, Southern California. And they actually taught 3 courses this last semester. And they did some interesting things there. So one of the things they did is they asked, so every one of them, and I'm on record, so I'm not making this up, every one of them in a public forum told all their other colleagues that we had arranged sort of a Hawaii bash in Mobisys this year. In a public forum said that every student had an amazing time doing this course. And they got amazing feedback. In fact, one of the professors went up and said, his review ratings, academic ratings, went up because of this course, because it provided a lot of empowerment to these students who were now seeing all this stuff happening, and they were with the times in some sense. So what these professors did, for example, is at least one of them in Wisconsin. He basically said, okay, so he taught the course, they did the regular thing, read a lot of papers on it, talked about the infrastructure, talked about the cloud, talked about the mobile, all of that stuff. And then they had these final projects. And the projects, and they said, do the projects, then you come up and you could do the demo in class to everybody else, plus create a video that you put on YouTube. So they had a lot of fun with this. So when this professor got up and talked to the audience, his talk was all about these videos. He said, look at the applications they built. And there were some very, very cool applications that you would think, aha, that's pretty cool. And so it started to really see that people are very creative and they do things, they think very out of the box, not like some of us, and that was very cool. So it really worked. Okay. So the good news then was, so there were lots of hiccups. Well, there were some hiccups there that we tried to help and smooth out in the process, which we did. But what happened was that starting fall, then we decided to sort of expand the program and, of course, add more services to it. So this summer, we have got interns as well as researchers working on building some of the more interesting services. So, for example, one of the more interesting services we are building is around video, multimedia, right? About taking live video and passing it on the website or moving it between phones and things. So instead of having the student go and say, okay, do this, it's less research. I mean, it's no longer sort of research, right? So why spend so much time on reinventing those things? I mean, there is some teaching element there. But so our hope is that we're going to provide that substrate that we can actually build some really fantastic video-based web services or applications that are across the thing. Similarly, we're working on another service that hasn't been filled, which is about, as I already mentioned, about collaborative sensing or collaborating working, right? So basically, you can write programs, and we have this concept of virtual sensors, which we'll talk about later. Well, not here, but generally, which allows you to then sort of think of the whole world and everybody else who's using these phones as a programming space for yourself. And you don't think of individual phones. So the hope is that we will keep rolling out these services in addition to the ones we have. And yes, they will have some bugs in it, and we will learn in the process. And perhaps we will even identify it. And we have identified some really hard research problems that we're going to work with the professors that helped us identify it. If they want to work with it themselves, that's great too. But we keep moving along and get to the point where these things are much, very interesting. So in fall, we have already signed up. We're going to take this program and make it international. So we've already signed up UCL. Kyle is here. He's going to be co-teaching that with Brad. I saw him here as well. So University College of London, they're going to do it. We also signed up somebody from Czech Republic with the Singapore Management Institute universities. They're going to teach a course as well. In the U.S., University of Michigan, Carnegie Mellon, University of Arkansas, I think, and a bunch of others have sort of signed up in the sense. And signing up means essentially that we're going to provide them all the course material, and over a period of time, hopefully develop this into a really solid course with lots of sort of where people or the professors exchange ideas and the students exchange ideas. And one more thought before I leave and give it to Brian, which is that in the world that I live in today, it is no longer the thing where you sort of have an office and you work in that office 8 to 5 or 8 to 10 or whatever the heck whatever amount of time you work. It is much more distributed. Okay, so companies will go where people are, and they will establish their offices as well. So what is happening is more and more software projects, more and more of these projects are obviously multidisciplinary and also geographically separated, where engineers are working with one another. So we haven't gotten there yet, but the vision is that students will get a preview to working in that way when they do this, when they work on the Hawaii infrastructure. So imagine a world where you were actually running projects. Many universities, for example, are teaching the same course, and they have these projects that they are working on collaboratively, and they're not just in that particular department, but they are in different schools, and they're collaborating. I mean, for people coming out with that level of training, coming out into the real world, into the job market, that's amazing. That's very, very cool. That's real world training that, for example, the industry doesn't have to do. So we're not there yet because as I was talking about the same sort of thing in an earlier event, one of the professors said to me that, hey, I don't know how to grade people that way. So yeah, that's true, but I'm sure that people can sort of think about how to do it. So with that, we will have a Q&A session maybe afterwards. What I'm going to do is hopefully now you have some sort of sense of why we're doing it, where we're coming from, why we're doing this. Hopefully you feel the excitement that we feel here, I sort of want to give the message that we are very, very open to any kinds of feedback, any kinds of comments you do, because leaving Microsoft on the side for a second and thinking it just purely from sort of an intellectual capacity, thinking about the students, the new generation, all that stuff, we really want to do this right. Okay, so we have a lot of ideas, but you are the people who actually do this thing. You are sort of in the trenches. So, if you tell us, if you give us a lot of this feedback, we will. I promise you that we will take each one of these and think about it deeply and try to incorporate them over a period of time. So with that, thank you very much for listening to me for the last 5-6 minutes or whatever, 10 minutes. And I'm going to pass it on to Brian, who's going to actually get into some level of detail, not too much, but to give you a sense of what it is that I've just talked about. And then we'll hand it over to Stuart.
Okay, thank you, Victor. So I'm going to give more of a little bit of technical meat as to what it is we're actually going to be providing, or I should say provided in the last semester. The next semester is probably going to be run fairly similar to the previous semester. So what I'm going to talk about is sort of give a quick overview of what it is that we're doing. And then I'm going to give an example of the sort of application that students might want to build, just to sort of put all the pieces together and paint a big whole picture. And then I'm going to do, very quickly, I'm going to give some details on what each of the different things are that we're providing. So as Victor mentioned, the whole point of this project is to provide sort of the building blocks, the low-level infrastructure that people writing mobile cloud apps might need to develop a nice app. And there's a lot of sort of intricate pieces involved in creating some of these more complex apps, and things can get pretty messy really quickly. And so a big part of what we wanted to do was to sort of take care of the basic stuff, sort of like provide an operating system for the cloud as opposed to, you know, a whole bunch of libraries that you normally have when you write code for say, a laptop or a desktop computer. You take advantage of all these things that are already there for you. And the idea here is to do the same sort of thing for cloud apps, to provide a set of sort of very basic services that provide things that allow the students to create much more intricate apps than they could than if they were starting sort of from scratch and had to write everything themselves. So when you think about these cloud-enabled mobile applications, they're really distributed systems and all the good and bad that entails. So you have large numbers of pieces of things all talking to each other. And so some of the things that we're working on providing, besides the device itself, and people might have websites or web services that they also build themselves. And then we would also provide various services for doing things like authentication, location, mapping. Just to clarify the difference between location and mapping, location tells you where you are in terms of like latitude, longitude, whereas mapping tells you if you have this latitude, longitude, this is the street address that corresponds to that, or this is an aerial photo of the area, or where you are on a map. And also a notification service, which it's actually very hard for a phone, because it's always moving all the time and gets different IP addresses wherever it goes, to be always available to a service that might want to send it a notification. So we provide a notification service that allows another service or entity that's connected to the cloud to send a notification to a client or a group of clients. So to give a sort of a concrete example of what something like this would look like, I'm going to show an example here of a Find My Phone app. And the idea is you have actually someone who just came by our demo booth told me he could have used this a week ago because he lost his phone. But if you lose your phone, then you go back to this website and you ask the phone to report in. And the phone will be notified and it'll let you see where it is on a map. And so what would you need if you're a student trying to build this? Well, we're providing basically all the things with the green background to the students, and the students would build the actual Find My Phone website and web service, and the little bit of code that goes on the mobile phone as well. And how a user would use this is they would go to the website, they would say they want to register their phone, they'd download a little application from the website onto their phone, and then their phone would register itself with the website. And then the phone gets lost, it washes up on a desert island somewhere, and the user goes back to the website, and now they want to authenticate themselves so they can prove that they're the owner of that phone that's lost, because you don't want just anybody saying your phone is lost and finding out where you are. So the user can authenticate themselves, and then they can issue a notification to the phone saying, I want to know where you're at. And the phone then can look itself up using the location service to find its location, send that back to the website. The website can provide that to the user, and the user can actually get a map showing its location in the real world using Bing Maps. So currently, this is our platform. As Victor mentioned, we plan to expand the number of services that we have as time goes on. But for the last semester, this is what we provided. We provided an HTC phone, this guy right here, and access to Windows Azure for writing your own websites and services in the cloud, and also a number of SDKs, tools, and sample code for using Windows Live ID, location services, Bing Maps, and a notification service. Oops, sorry, wrong button. So this is the phone that we provided last time. It's a Windows Mobile 6.5 phone. We're probably going to use Windows Mobile 6.5 again in the fall semester simply because Windows Phone 7 won't be available until near the end of the semester. So we'll probably use Windows Phone 7 though in the spring. This phone is fairly capable. It's got a nice high resolution, and it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in addition to 3G, and it has a built-in GPS unit, a camera, and a bunch of other sensors and useful stuff. We also provide the development environment for writing code that runs on the phone, and that uses the Visual Studio and the Windows Mobile SDK. We also provided the location API. This is for use in accessing the location service, and students could use this to write code that would find out where their phone is. Similarly, the Bing Maps API, once you know where your phone is, you can map it, or vice versa, you can put in an address and find out what its lat long should be of a particular location. And then Windows Azure, so Azure, I don't know if everyone's familiar with it. It's Microsoft's cloud service offering. It provides the ability to basically write your own web services or websites, as well as do database storage in the cloud. And this allows students to basically create their own website. They don't have to worry about registering the name because their website automatically gets a name under the subdomain cloudapp.net. And so it's really easy for a student to create their own website or their own web service and provide an alternative UI to the mobile phone's UI itself. And then Live ID is just an authentication service which allows somebody to prove that they're the same person that was at a website before. And this just saves the students from having to write all this kind of stuff themselves. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but it's the kind of thing that if someone's done it already for you, it's not the interesting stuff that we want the students to concentrate on. And then finally, we wrote our own notification service. Again, mobile devices, they don't have fixed IP addresses, so they're hard to talk to if they're out roaming around. The notification service automatically keeps track of them so that if you need to send a notification from somewhere to one of these mobile devices, it can make sure it gets routed correctly so that the mobile device can get the notification. And since there are, basically, as you might have noticed, I went through it kind of quickly, but there's a lot of SDKs and development environments and Visual Studio and things like this that students might otherwise need to download and install and configure and put together. And one of the feedback we got in the previous semester was that this took a lot of time and a lot of effort. So to make it easier for the students, we're going to provide a virtual machine that has all these things already downloaded, installed, and configured on it so that a student can just quickly load up the VM and launch right into coding their app and not have to worry about all this configuration stuff. And for, inevitably, people have questions. Either students want to talk amongst themselves about people seeing the same sort of things they're seeing when they try to this, that, or the other thing, or they want to ask us a question about how to do something. So we also provide a forum on Microsoft Research's community website, which allows the students to just interact with each other or us. And once they have their app, they can give us a pointer to it, and we'll list it on our app depot, which runs both on the phone and there's a website. And this allows the students to see what other students are writing and download and try out their applications. So when a student finishes writing an application, or even in the middle of writing an application, wants people to try out sort of their beta, they can release it here, and all the other students in the courses can access it and try it out. So if you're interested in this project, we have this website on Microsoft Research's main website, research.microsoft.com/Hawaii. We'll get you to our project website. And then we have for the students or people who are participating, we have a website that has more of sort of the nitty-gritty details about how to code the things and where to get all the different pieces you need, and has some other pointers and tips and stuff like that. And one of the things that we've been aiming to provide as this project is lots of example code. So there's a huge slew of services that we're providing, and sometimes it's hard to know how to use them. And most of them come with some examples, but it never hurts to have a few more. And the other thing that we wanted to do, though, is that most things that come with example code, they rarely show example code that also includes how to use it with something else. So one of the big things we tried to do with our example code was to combine things using different services together to show how you would interface the pieces with one another, which is something that often isn't covered by example code. And that's my talk. If I can take questions now if anybody has any. Yes?
The quick thing I was,
oh, I'm sorry. He's going to bring you a mic. Sorry. Right
here. The service like Find My Phone, does it work with the same number, or does it work with the embedded number in the handset? So for example, if let's take somebody steals my phone, and obviously the first thing they'll do is change the SIM.
It doesn't use the SIM.
This is the number which comes at the manufacturing time.
Yeah. Yes. There's an embedded device ID inside Windows mobile phones, and there's an API that allows you to retrieve actually a hashed version of it. For privacy reasons, you have to provide a hash string that's unique to your app. But the result is that your app gets a unique ID for every phone, and it's hard-coded into the phone.
So even if SIM is changed, you still can locate your phone?
Even if the SIM is changed, you would still get your phone. Yes. Brad.
Actually, this is a little bit random, but I just happened to come upon the Star Trek stuff that Chandu Thekath's group did at MSR Silicon Valley about computing over tracks of mobility and stuff like that. This was a Mobisys paper like a couple years ago or so. Is that by any chance available as part of this? What's its relationship to Azure and Hawaii? Is there any relationship, or just random question? Perhaps too random. Sorry.
That one. I think the answer is.
Might it be part of?
Yeah. So the short. I'm sorry, I just picked this up because of recording. The short answer is that it's not part of the Hawaii service now, but think of sort of that as. This is actually what the intention of Hawaii is, which is there are lots of research projects out there, and as they mature, they didn't get pulled into Hawaii infrastructure. And they have to be at a point where they're actually quite reusable by everybody else. So that's a separate project, done, it's kind of cool, and now that you mention it, I'll think harder about seeing whether we can pull it in.
Any other questions? Yes.
Inevitable question, I suppose, but what's the IP restrictions, and is there privacy issues with students using the Azure system?
I believe that the students using the Azure are just restricted to whatever the standard terms of use are for Azure. We don't have any special terms of use outside of the regular terms of use for Azure. In terms of using our code, the only thing is that we ask that if people using the location system ask the user before they start finding out their location, so that nobody is being tracked against their wishes or anything like that. So we do ask that anybody calling the location API make sure the user knows they're doing that before they do it. But other than that, we don't have any terrible privacy concerns, I don't think.
Materials that are associated with the project, as well as are members of the team willing to come out, give short guest lectures, or is there mechanisms for technical support?
So to answer the first part of that question, that's been a commonly requested thing. As of basically the end of the first semester, we got some feedback that people would like to see that. We don't currently have any formulated courseware. We're thinking about including that or allowing people to contribute that for redistribution. In terms of our previous semester, I actually personally visited all the schools involved and gave a short tutorial lecture and talked to any of the interested students. Planning to do that again next semester. If there are too many schools, it might be a little hard to schedule them all, but we'll see. Yes?
Do you have any partnership with carriers so that the phones are activated, they have a phone plan, they can really use the phone?
That we do not have. So we provided, for the last semester, we provided the phones, but no data plans. So the schools either use the Wi-Fi so that they could get data access on the phones using the Wi-Fi, which works just fine as long as you have Wi-Fi coverage wherever you want to use it. Or the students just use their own SIM cards in the phones. Any others? Or I think we'll go to Stuart.
You're going to do a demo, Brian?
Oh, I was just showing this is what our application exchange looks like, where you can select one of these examples and then choose to download it and install it on your phone. So anyways, let's go back to...
Okay, thank you.
Can I have that? Thanks.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Stuart Tansley here. This is a bit of an interesting context for me in this project. I've been involved with networking for almost half of my career, but you may know me more as one of the devices people in external research in Microsoft Research, where I've been doing robotics and sensor networks for a number of years. But I have loved to work with Victor's team, and indeed Brian, who I worked with closely when I first came to Microsoft back in 2001. And we did IPv6 together, and I've been managing to do a number of networking activities over the years, including the software radio program that's in the Demo Fest booth, as well as the Hawaii project. Going forward, though, Judith Brissett has joined us today, which I'm pleased to hear, Director for Computer Science, because this is also a computer science education program as well as networking research. Going forward, I will transition to Judith and her team, but you always get a good answer from me if you do have any questions later. I want to do perhaps a little bit of an extended Jerry Springer thing. A comment was made yesterday about final thoughts on the presentations that you've just heard from Victor and Brian. We, External Research, are the group that supports our researchers in reaching you folks. They can talk to you directly, but they're inevitably bandwidth limited. They can only talk to a few of you, a few dozen of you maybe. But we can hopefully magnify what they can do with our resources and our program management. And we are wanting to work together with Victor's team. And these are some thoughts that we presented a month ago when we launched this at Mobisys 2010. So available today for pioneers that want to go for this right now. We're not holding you back. We encourage you. If you want to go through the regular, download the software from MSDNAA approach. We can't give you phones on demand. Hardware gets a little pricey, so we can't just give you phones if you want them on demand. But if you have phones already, we have all the documentation available at this website. And while we don't author the courseware, while we've had this feedback that perhaps some courseware would be good, we tend to be a bit reluctant about writing courseware for professors. We're not the best authors of lecture material. We do PowerPoint decks, maybe you do PowerPoint decks too. But we really want to empower you folks with the information, the technical information. You can populate your own slides and own courseware. We're also just going to give you the Microsoft-only materials. You probably want to enhance that with a more broader explanation. Well, as Brian has already said, but just in summary, we're targeting the fall semester for our version 1.0. What we did in the spring semester this year, we consider it a pilot at Duke, USC, and University of Wisconsin-Madison. Those guys were very happy guinea pigs, as Victor has explained. We got some really good feedback from them. But we're also planning for the long term here. This is not a one-shot deal, and we're already thinking about the spring, and hopefully that's the best time frame for Windows Phone 7. We keep on pressuring Brian, who's the main developer on this project, to get Windows Phone 7 ready, but yeah, maybe January is the best time for that. The package, in summary, is the software and the services, but right now, download it all separately from MSDNA. As many of you will know that can get a little bit scary, especially with an embedded platform like the Windows mobile phone here. There's a lot of bits and pieces that you have to do. So Brian has done sterling work in packaging this up as a single VM, a single virtual machine download. Much simpler install experience. We are really hoping to see that model for deployment extend to many of the not only research but also education programs from Microsoft. It is coming. We're one of the early ones on that. There are instructor materials already from this website that are produced by the pilot courses. It's early days, so some of it is not tidy right now. You'll have to do some construction, but we hope to package that up for the fall a little bit more tidier for you. Similarly, student materials. There's an app store. This is not the commercial, retail Microsoft App Store for Windows Mobile Phone and Windows Phone 7 going forward. This is our own student world and research world for students to produce their apps that they can share amongst each other with their peers and with their professors. And we also want to see this as a part of a community of people talking about what this idea is, as Victor's explained well, of the mobile and cloud as a default platform for writing applications. Let's not assume, let's not think about our platform as anything but the mobile and cloud is there as a given. Now what cool applications can I build on that? What cool services can I provide on that? What extensions can I build as a student? Some remarks on these comments. So anyone can download this. This is freely available. There are no restrictions over this. We've not have put a heavy burden of some sort of IP or licenses. It's the regular academic use of software from Microsoft. So typically, if you're familiar with MSDNA, it's that kind of thing. Phone hardware will be available selectively. We do have budget for phone hardware. I do try and manage expectations on that. This is not a major marketing push from Microsoft. This is external research in Microsoft Research. We have some limited budget for phones, but there will be phones available. We have an approach to the technical materials. The documentation is modular, so I know there's been asked for instructor material or lecture material from us, but we want to provide materials that you can use, pick and mix materials in a modular way. So it's not a complete course. It's not a complete training set. In fact, it's not even training materials. This is technical documentation and the professor-authored materials that you can use in your lecture notes. There's a combination here of Microsoft products and Microsoft research technology, and the services are from various places, usually from Microsoft. And so this package, we're trying to put a good envelope on that for you, but it is a combination of things, and it's not like a full-blown product, a single product from Microsoft. So you will need to get involved in the community and look for peer support, but as well as the active partition from Victor's team. I think something I would like to highlight that Victor's perhaps didn't stress so much today, but really engagement with the research team is one of the benefits of what we're offering today. That is a rare thing. This is because it's not a marketing program. This is engagement with the research team. Lastly, what we plan to do, subject to change, because we're looking for your feedback. This is not locked in stone. We are off and running here. We've got a program, but we're open to feedback. We're going to survey the pilot courses for lessons learned. We have budget for about 250 phones, and the Sims maybe. Let's get some feedback on what the implications are. I would love there to be a partnership with a service provider. There isn't one right now, but if you have any good contacts, then let us know. We're going to produce the download packages, the VM package. We do have a full intention to migrate to our new platform, Windows Phone 7. We're on the brink of having that available internally with developer phones, so we're eagerly waiting for that. We've got access already to the software kits, but we know people want the hardware, so it's pointless doing a program which is software only right now. But the hardware is tantalizingly close. We plan to set up a student competition. I'm keen, and it's been suggested to us in feedback internally, that we integrate with Imagine Cup. Imagine Cup just finished its finals for this year in Poland, in Warsaw. Congratulations to the Thai team. Apparently they did a phenomenal job. Imagine Cup is the major, probably the biggest, I think, student developer competition in the world. 300,000 students sign up for this in 2009. I don't even have the number for 2010. But having this as a special component within Imagine Cup, I think, would make a lot of sense. So look for that coming. And we're seeking feedback from interested professors, yourselves, you are here. Do check out the website. I think Brian just put up links, right? The screenshots are very pretty. We've got a great, beautiful website. It's very usable. Give us feedback on the website. If nothing, if you can't find what you need, we are really open to that right now. And how to sign up? Well, mail to hiforum@microsoft.com. Really, that just goes straight to Brian's inbox, but we check all the mail, and let us know what you think. Give us feedback on what you've heard. And if you're interested in engaging with us on this, then please let us know. That's it for now. Any final questions before we wrap up for the next session? Thank you.
I have a question for them.
Go for it.
So,
Oh.
okay, thanks. So let me, we've been speaking for about, 40 minutes, 50 minutes now. You've heard what we said. Let me ask like a sort of simple question. How many of you actually, how many of you have been thinking about teaching a course on mobility and in cloud? Okay, that's quite a few. That's great to know, because I certainly believe that, sort of the future, that's where the future is, and that's where the world is changing. I would like to get some thoughts from you guys. Anybody can contribute about how you were thinking about doing this, and what were you going to do? Anybody want to take a shot? Yeah? Go ahead.
So we're sort of developing a 3-course sequence. The first course will be developing mobile applications that will probably include, hopefully include components of the cloud as well, for engineers who are non-computer science majors. So it's so we're looking at your competitor's new product for doing drag and drop interfaces and things like the App Inventor, right? The second 2 courses are for computer science students. One will be a pure mobile computing, cloud computing application development course. We have a collection of pure technology courses like that, and this will be one of them. And then the third one is what we're calling distributed enterprise technology. So this will be a module, a 1-week module within that overall course. And in a sense, culminating, these courses will lead into our capstone program. So there will be a project which we're actually working with Microsoft to incorporate the Imagine Cup into the capstone courses. So, there'll be a sort of a project-based capstone where these technologies will be used to develop some kind of application.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Just introduce yourself for everybody else.
Okay, my name is Xin Liu. I'm from UC Davis Computer Science Department. I actually taught a course on computer networks, and as an experiment, I used Android as course project. By the end of the class, this is what I learned, good or bad. Half of students love it, and half students hate it, because there indeed is a learning curve. And another part, I think this will be really helpful, is when we were doing the project, basically students have to learn everything, and there's no component for them to use per se, but I think some, for example, if you really want to develop a larger application, some components, as I talked to Brian earlier today, I think will be really helpful, have locations and some kind of servers in the cloud to help with that. I think it will be really helpful. Just as another experience, or another colleague of mine at the UC Davis actually taught mobile phone application development class as a two-quarter project course as kind of capstone type of stuff. And that was really successful. A lot of students teamed up and did iPhone app development and Android development. I think, again, in that context, what I learned is, well, if there's some infrastructure support like what you have here, will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. Brad Karp from UCL. So Kyle Jamison and I have already signed up to, in spring of 2011, teach a mobile cloud focused class. So since we've already signed up, I figured I should at least say a couple things of what we were thinking we would do. We're going to be teaching, I guess you could sort of call it a traditional graduate seminar in the sense that it's going to be research paper focused. So mobile cloud computing isn't exactly an established research area of its own just yet. Maybe that would be the result of the teaching of classes like this over a few years. So it's probably going to have several distinct threads. And actually, I stole this idea shamelessly from Ramesh's course. I'd encourage everyone. That was the one that I spent the most time looking at. But Ramesh's graduate seminar had threads of papers drawn from distributed systems, from cloud computing, from security and privacy, sort of areas that are perhaps somewhat more established in computer systems and networking research, trying to sort of find a way to, through discussion, integrate them into a whole for mobile cloud computing, and to sort of provide background for students to really do not just apps, but sort of apps with an angle of research on them for graduate students. And so I think that's really the focus of what we're doing. One thing that might be somewhat unique about the way we do things at UCL is that students do a master's thesis in the graduate program. And so probably we will have some number of students do group master's thesis projects where they can sort of have several months when they're not taking classes, because the master's degree at UCL includes several months in the summer when there's no class activity, nothing but thesis. And so students will have a several month period where they can work together as a group and hopefully build something pretty substantial. And so that's something that we're looking forward to.
Thanks, Brad.
I'm Mark Chang from Olin College, and for the past 2 years I've been teaching a mobile apps course. And I think two things that I found is, one is that you can be completely independent of other CS courses. It can be fully integrated because it's really a fantastic motivating tool for students to learn concepts like Java if you're using Android, C# if you're using other platforms. But the way that we've run the course is as kind of a synthesis course between kind of interaction design and human factors design, entrepreneurship, as well as engineering. Because I think with the kind of ecosystems that we have now, with at least the Android and the iPhone having kind of the direct channel to actual consumers, students really can get the whole experience from product concept all the way through delivery to end user, which makes them do things like actual testing, regression testing, multiple device testing, and those kinds of things. And having eyeballs in the millions of end users on their applications actually is a very strong motivator to do actual real coding instead of kind of class project coding.
Okay, I've been asked to wrap up, so I will. I want to make one distinction between, I guess, iPhone and G phones or whatever. They are very popular. I know we sort of understand that aspect, but if you think about Apple as an example, Apple is a non-player when it comes to cloud services. It doesn't necessarily have, they've done a pretty good job with sort of these end devices, but they have not necessarily done a great enough job in the cloud. So one of the value proposition that Hawaii has, even though what you've seen is just a kickoff, so you have some basic services that you've seen that we thought are absolutely necessary to provide to start it off, but that I want to highlight is MSR's backend. And what I mean by that is there are a tremendous amount of technologies, deep non-computer technologies, such as speaker recognition or natural language processing or machine learning or pattern recognition and things like that, which can be brought to bear when you start to write these really, really interesting services for the phones. Okay, so so if you want to sort of be at the cusp of not only teaching the students, in this new world that I keep talking about, but also take them to the edge where they're actually looking at some of these hardcore technologies and realizing the fact that you need to offload, the fact that you are going to be resource restricted, and don't get too enamored by just sort of the sophisticated of, you got an app for that, then you start to see what the value proposition here is. But anyway, that was sort of my final comment. I hope you got the gist of it. We are all available. As I said to begin with, we're very passionate, very excited, very energized about this thing, and we're going to keep pushing it, and we'll keep learning. And as we learn, we're going to keep incorporating new ideas and new thoughts, and we would flourish if we get partnerships from you, and this is sort of becomes a very collaborative effort in the future. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your being here.